In my practice of Aikido, I have come to find that it has been one of the pieces that I really was missing prior to starting my training. And in the beginning, it took me a little while to get really solid in a good schedule of practicing as often as I could. And I thought that I was practicing when I showed up at the dojo and whenever I was on the mat. But being able to walk into the space and separate what was going on in my mind and in my day, and then walking into the space, started to make me realize that there was actually a way that in my awareness of what was going on, that I could tell the outside things to, you can't be here right now. This space that I'm creating here for myself, I'm taking up this room, I'm allowing myself to have this practice, and I'm, ultimately showing up for myself by putting in the effort. And that has been something that over time has become something that I've learned how to be able to carry with me in my daily life. And that is a huge reason why I am so committed to it, because I truly feel the benefits of it in a day-to-day basis, whether it's dealing with my own feelings, healing from the past, dealing with fear of the future, or even just going through day-to-day actions with, interactions with my own family and, outside world events or whatever. But being able to come back to this space of, right now, I'm right here, I'm practicing this, and these are my variables. I have the ground underneath me. Right now, there's this gorgeous day, so we're celebrating that by being outside right now. And taking some time to be able to collect everything that has been feeling like it's being pulled in every direction over here, and finding where that centered place is, to where I can try to take up more space and make that grow and open up into it, to where I can decide a little bit more about how I want to be able to deal and show up with those things that are around me. And to a degree, that is like building yourself like a layer of protection. Not only is it believing that you have the right to be here and that you matter, but that it's also whatever you're feeling right now is real, and whatever you're feeling is completely valid, whether that's being scared of something or being uneasy, having anxiety, whatever. And if we can come to terms with the fact that wherever we are right now is just a moment, it's just a feeling, it's just a thought, it can also have a lot of value because it helps us get to know ourselves better. And we can also cultivate practices to decide how we want to show up going further into these situations, or whether or not it deserves our time. If you don't want to be part of something, then you can let it roll right past you. And there's physical movements in the Aikido practice that are based on you taking up this space and also learning mobility and being able to transfer your weight and move around without diminishing your space and without letting it be sacrificed by another person's space, but rather like learning how to orbit with it and to continue moving, even though this other thing continues to keep moving without one thing taking over the other. And so as we go through variables that are out of our control, and for me, I've felt like this practice has been not just what's been happening over the last month, but this has also been because I walked into this practice with a lot of things, and then I wanted to learn how to be able to deal with it better, how to cope with it better, and whether it was anxiety or grief or PTSD or the memories that wouldn't go away or whatever. The idea is learning how to figure out what is yours and what is not is an essential practice, because whenever there's things that have happened to us, we are not necessarily our past. We've been changed by it. We've continued to grow through it, but it does not define us, and it is not our end point, right? Because right now is what is now. The future hasn't happened yet. The past is in the past, and we can separate from it as we heal from things and we forgive ourselves for what we don't think we did right, or forgive other people as we can. But the forgiveness is ultimately not waiting for somebody else to give you the approval of whether or not it's time to do that. And you know when it's time. And usually whenever you can get to those spaces and you know that it's time, there's a lot less friction in being able to take up this space and just be able to say thank you, but no thank you anymore, you know, and then let things go. So in the physical practice of that, you can use the body movements of the category of Tai Sabaki, which is in Aikido. This is entering into the situation and how you choose to enter in. This is also seeing something coming towards you and knowing that you don't have to just stand there and get hit with it, that you can actually move out of the way and let it continue past. Or you can use this tenkan, which is ultimately something is flowing towards you and you decide to turn and then go the same direction as it. It's a pattern of redirection without losing the awareness of where you are in space and where the other thing is, you know, regardless of what it is. It could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be physical, it could even be a practice partner that cares about you, that is a friend of yours, you know, that you show up at the mat together and you've got these really amazing practices, but right now we don't have that luxury of being able to practice with other people. And movement arts has been created to be the part of the Aikido practice where we're developing how we're going to show up, to be able to do the techniques and to be able to do this, to do the practices whenever we have the opportunity. But that being said, this is a prime time example of why the entire world, the entire situation that we're in right now is the practice, right? And it's not easy. I have to return to this practice a million times a day because something triggers me, something catches me off guard, you know, whether it's fear, some news story, whatever, and I have to again reset, go through all the steps from initially figuring out what it is, deciding how I want to show up to it, and then eventually finding the creativity of how I want to show up to it, how I want to allow it to be part of my situation, and whether or not I want to decide to let it take me over, you know, emotionally or whatever. And that's where dealing with anxiety is, it's a real thing. And I think that right now, even if you haven't experienced a lot of it in your life, there might be feelings that you're feeling right now that seem really new, because maybe you don't have a practice in it. Maybe you don't know how to be able to show up for these different situations. But so we're going to do just a couple movements to practice the different redirection patterns of being able to orbit the things that are going on around us. And so if you stand up and you start to picture where you are in space, and first of all, it's about just getting inside your body and figuring out what it feels like to be inside your body. And if you feel like you've got, you know, holding in some areas or tension patterns, these are really, really educational. They don't have to be scary. They can be sometimes, but they can be met with a level of curiosity. They can be met with a level of exploration where you start to just kind of look into it and check in to see if it's authentically yours, if it's something that you really need to hold on to, or if it's something that you can really find a way where you're thinking about what actually is. And you're finding a way to figure out how to understand it and find acceptance with it, right? So the very first thing that we'll do is starting out with your feet right underneath your hips. And you take your knee towards your toes first, knee towards your toes, and start to lift and spread your toes and just figure out where your connection to the ground is in the first place. And then see if you can spread out all of your toes and really grab the ground underneath you. You might feel like that starts to really wake up all of the muscles in your legs and in your hips. And then if you squeeze your belly towards your spine, this is really like almost like flexing your whole abdominal area. And then see if you can open up underneath the floating ribs around the bottom where the diaphragm is. And this is going to be the seat, right? The diaphragm is not just one layer at the bottom. It's the entire inside of the whole ribcage area, right? And so you have the opportunity to be able to set your foundation figure out where you are in space, and then I'll show you a sideways view, right? So from here, I'm aiming to have ears over shoulders over hips so that I'm keeping this whole core part of me in alignment, right? And so from here, if you're bending your knees and you start to shift your weight from side to side, you also don't want to let your torso go forward, because then you lose weight in this other foot. But keeping this center axis up and down, see if you can shift knee towards toes, knee towards toes, knee towards toes, and even double check, are your arms like solid? Are they holding back? Are you flexing? Then shake everything out. You might start to notice that your arms are moving because the rest of your body is moving. And this is what you ultimately want for the beginning of this practice. We'll wake everything up towards the top half in a minute. But from here, as you start to shift, you're going to take your awareness from just feeling what it feels like in your bottom half, but then lift your eyes on the horizon and start to let your awareness look out. And so as you do this, soften in your neck and jaw, take the back of your head up and back so that you can keep your ears over your shoulders, over your hips. And then breathing in from the bottom of your feet, up through your knees, up through your belly, through the floating ribs. And without lifting your shoulders, let all of that breath come up to underneath the clavicle and between your shoulder blades and really expand in all directions. And let everything exhale all the way back down. And so you are really trying to magnetically connect to the ground underneath you, really trusting your foundation. And even if this is all that you have time for throughout the day, if you can just take a couple big deep breaths and be able to give yourself this reset, now without bouncing up and down between, this is going to be really trying to travel along this center area, right? This is the most condensed part of your weight at this point. Now we're going to try to expand that even bigger. So if you're thinking about this not just being in front of you, but this is also all the way behind you, we're going to shift one leg from the hip joint out, put that foot back down, and continue to keep moving back and forth. Now as you're doing this, double checking that this knee is all the way to the outside. So from here, this is keeping that knee all the way to the outside and shifting your weight. And again, checking in to have ears over shoulders over hips. And now see if you can find a flow between this direction, bring this foot parallel, then out to the other side, then this foot parallel, out to the side, and then parallel, out to the side. And you might even really feel yourself almost like have like a shaking kind of slowing down pattern, and that is really not uncommon. You're waking up your connective tissue right now. You're getting in contact and having a conversation with what's going on in the connective tissue. And so being able to shift and keep your awareness on the horizon as you're doing that, and as you get more comfortable shifting your weight back and forth, see if you can give yourself a chance to spin and twist in the core, in the floating ribs, turning all the way around, all the way around. And notice that this is about as close as you're going to get to 360 degrees of awareness, right? This is the closest that you're going to get to being able to have the least amount of a blind spot behind you, because you can see everything from shifting from this 90-degree stance to the other side. Good. All right, so from here, if you're in this Han knee shape, this half stance, being able to move forward and carve your arms up. This is not going to just be lifting from the top of the shoulders. You're actually pushing up from your feet through the side body muscles here, through the back of the shoulder blades, and carving up on the heaviest underside of your arm. Up and back, right? So this is going to be up and then back. Up and then back. Up and then back. And the idea with this is that you're filling up this space with more of you. So you're breathing into it, almost pressing into what's behind you as well, so that you can stay balanced when you shift your weight to this back leg. This is going to be an opportunity for you to not let your chest push forward like this, but to have balance and maintain this center axis. So if you're sliding up and back, front foot follows the back foot. I'm sorry, front foot slides first, then the back foot follows. And back, up, and then back. And then switch sides, right? So up, and then back. Up, and then back. Up, and then back. Up, and then back. Good. This position, or the movement rather, is called irimi. Okay, thank you. Okay, put it down and wash your hand. All right, so the idea with irimi is that something could be coming towards you, right? And you are actually trying to envision, because you're the only thing you're dealing with right now, right? You are trying to envision something coming into your space, and you're deciding how you want it how you want to show up when it approaches and gets into close proximity. And so as this is moving forward, if you look down at wherever you're at, whether you have lines on your mat or not, the position here is actually moving in but off to the side, right? So it's in but off to the side. And the idea with this is that you are going to move right into this other thing's space, but almost like you're brushing right past it, right? Without actually letting it make contact to where your movement is going to stop. So up, and you can let your arms drop down for this one too, right? Up and down. But if you keep your arms out, it continues that practice of pushing into the space, taking up more space. So for our practice today, I'm going to say just keep your arms up and back, 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 and switch sides, up and back, up and back. So from this view, this is offline and back, offline and back. Good. Other side, offline and back, offline and back. Good. So I'm going to switch this direction, because tension is the next one that we're going to do, but you need to be able to see the pattern, right? You're going to clear this space for whatever's moving into this area, and you want to be able to move offline with your back foot and then get this whole front other half of you to be offline and back, so that you can let whatever it is go straight past. And this could be, you can practice this walking through the woods. You can practice this as you're walking through your house, trying to, not run into your furniture. It doesn't necessarily have to be with another human being. If you have the opportunity to be able to maybe work with a family member or something like that, that's totally great too. Even pets, you can watch them coming, right? You can move your body offline and then out of the way, and you can clear that path for it. Now, on an emotional level, this can also be if somebody is coming towards you with some kind of mood that isn't yours, that you have to deal with. It's not necessarily your responsibility to fix it. Maybe there's absolutely no way to fix it. Maybe it's just something that somebody's got to get off their chest, or right now there's a lot of complex feelings about everything right now. Because you're moving offline and back, you're still paying attention to whatever it is, but you're not letting it get all the way inside you to where you are stopping, taking care of yourself, right? And so this decision of being able to not only pay attention to what's happening in front of you, but move offline, still paying attention to whatever that is, but allowing it its own space to keep moving. It's actually a very conscientious and caring way to be able to see something that's coming towards you that maybe it's not time to do for you to have to address, right? Or that maybe it's something that needs more space right now. Maybe it's some situation that needs more space to work its own stuff out. And this practice can be you understanding that your space matters too, and you can move offline and back. Again, offline and back. And keeping your hands out in front is also going to be that practice of you taking up all of this extra space in here too, right? So offline and back. Offline and back. Other side, right? Offline and back. Offline and back. All right, so the next one that we talked about was the tenkan, and that's whenever two things are moving towards each other, but one redirects and then continues the same direction as the one that was coming towards it. Now, this is also a magnificent way to be able to handle emotional things that you might not want to necessarily have to take on, right? This is not ignoring it or letting it get into your blind spot. This is not letting it go past you and then turning a blind eye to it. This is actually a very considerate way of being able to flow with something that is being pushed towards you, but to be able to put yourself in a safe position. And so the first practice of this is going to be a pivot. So from here, if I've got one foot out and the other foot is sideways, the first thing is going to be a pivot where this changes. Okay, now the next piece of it is going to be the pivot, and then the back ankle opens, let the front foot slide back and become the back, right? So again, pivot, open this back ankle, and then take the front foot back. Now notice my axis, I'm aiming to have ears over shoulders over hips, and to maintain this axis and still be taking up space behind me, because I want to be as round and spherical as possible, but I also want to be paying attention to everything that's going on around me. And tenkan is a very useful tool for that. So from here, not only are you taking up the space in front of you, but there's a pivot, slide your front foot back, right? Pivot, slide your front foot back. And you're keeping your front foot, your toes, and your front foot, your knee, and your eyes all in the same direction. So from here, I've got this view, and then once I change to here, I've got this view. So very close to having full circle awareness, right? And so from here, pivot, slide your front foot back, pivot, slide your front foot back, pivot, slide your front foot back. Good? So the other view of this is pivot, slide your front foot back, pivot, slide your front foot back. Now my arms are not also like super flexed. I'm not trying to be aggressive in the top part of the body. This is open in the clavicle. This is very heart forward. Let your shoulder blades drip down your back, but also still between the shoulder blades, take up more space here. This is going to allow you to get a more solid core position so that you can support where your shoulders are without tensing them up. And it will also allow you to have a little bit more softness in your neck and jaw as you're making these transitions. Pivot, slide your front foot back, okay? Now the next one that we'll do is Yurimi Tenkan. So we're mixing together the step forward, the pivot, and the Tenkan. So from here, this is going to be a practice of ears over shoulders over hips. You're still taking your knee towards toes on the front foot and the back leg and the front leg. Step forward, cut up, pivot, slide back, cut down. Step forward, cut up, pivot, slide back, cut down. Step forward, cut up, pivot, slide back, cut down. Okay, from the side view, step forward, cut up, pivot, slide back, cut down. Step forward, cut up, pivot, slide back, cut down. Now, again, because you're working so hard on all of these new movements that are inside your body, it is extremely important to be thinking about doing the inside work and the outside work at the same time. And so having like the visualization of something moving into your space or moving towards you, something that you have to be able to take up space and be able to maneuver around, right? This is going to be not only looking directly in front of you, but softening your view in this center position. You're softening here so that you can see further along the landscape. Okay, so that practice is a centering practice. And so as you're breathing in, so this is going to be breathe in as you step forward, cut up, pivot, exhale, cut back, right? So you're softening your gaze so that you can see everything around you. Step forward, cut up on your inhale, pivot, slide back, cut down on your exhale. Now you can see if you can add a little bit more of a dynamic nature to it by giving yourself a little bit more pressure of pushing off from the back foot as you make the transition. See if you can make this turn in the middle, that center pivot, a little bit more condensed. Then shake everything out. All right, and then come to a seat. And you may feel like you're not functioning so much from up here like you may have at the beginning of this practice, but maybe you're feeling a little bit more in your body. And that has been one of the best pieces of information that I've received from this practice, and it's a huge reason why I have to do this every day. To be totally honest, one of my go-to holding patterns is really just kind of staying aware, but almost like a hyper-awareness of looking around and seeing what's going on around me. But if you get consumed by worry, and if you get consumed by being anxious about what's going on, thinking about what all the variables could be, it can stop you from having action. And action does not need to necessarily be just sporadic and chaotic either. It can be using these awareness practices of, is something coming towards me? Should I move forward and offline? Is something coming towards me and then I move offline and back? Is something moving towards me but then I want to change direction and flow with it? These are options and variables. And if you can practice these things on your own to where you've become, they become second nature to you, even prior to working with a partner, it becomes way stronger whenever you show up to practice, because you've already learned how to manage your own weight and you're managing your own holding patterns, so that whenever you do get to work with another partner, the next layer, the next lesson becomes, how do you gauge the distance between you and whatever else is happening? And that's that distance, that fighting distance, right? That battlefield, if you will, is not only on a physical level. These things are on an emotional level and on a spiritual level. And right now, not getting consumed by the worry or the anxiety or of the things that you don't have control over necessarily, but doing what you can with what you can in the time that you can is your best practice right now. And sometimes that might be surrendering to the emotion of it and taking some space and allowing yourself to cry or get upset, but knowing that your feelings are valid and you're absolutely not alone. Sometimes even in the best days of our lives, those being able to access all of those emotions is absolutely essential, because we have to be able to allow ourselves to be able to feel the full range, to be able to also really measure the reality that is going on around us. And that to a certain degree is spiritual warfare. We do get to decide how we're going to show up in all these practices. And even prior to what's been going on over the last month, being able to decide how you want to show up to a stressful situation at work, or how you want to, or a situation with a friend, a situation with your children, whatever. This is all practice in you being able to choose the way of how you're going to show up to the practice. And also acknowledging that not only are you important in whatever the situation is, but the other person is just as important too. And so right now I encourage you to take some time to explore these practices, maybe even see if it starts to make outside situations, conversations, text messages, what you read in the news, whatever, it might give it a different light of awareness to where you are deciding how you feel about it, instead of allowing your emotions to, or your thoughts to tell you how you feel about it, right? You might get an opportunity to really see things from a different perspective. And like I said, there's a reason that I know that I can't stop doing these practices, and why I've decided to share them with you, because this is something that I have to remember all day long. And now that I've done this for this long, I have felt that it has increased my ability to snap out of those triggered moments a little faster than I did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And for that, I'm forever grateful, you know. And so the message here is that I'm now sharing these things with you. I hope that you find some benefits in them. I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any. I will be putting out more offerings for you very soon. And that can range from these shorter videos that we've been doing for a long time on Instagram and Facebook, with the descriptions of, you know, just a 60-second, 30 to 60-second movement pattern. And then we've expanded them a little longer into some of these that are, you know, 5 and 15 minutes to, there's been some Facebook Live classes that have been almost up to an hour. And then there is an option if you want to do one-on-one work where we can arrange, you know, private lessons. And these are all things that I was doing prior to our current stay-at-home situation, and it's been my motivation in continuing the work with the movement arts, because I know that it is a practice that even if you have no experience with yoga or with Aikido, it's an introductory, foundation-based practice that ultimately is reinforcing the fact that you matter, and it matters that you take the time to be able to give yourself a little bit more space, and that it matters that you take your space all the time, because you matter. And even if your practice throughout the entire day is, you know, write it down on a piece of paper, or put it up, you know, somewhere on a mirror, or on a desk or something like that, where you're going to see it all day long. Or even if you can remember to just at least like remind yourself to say that, you know, I matter and these other people matter too, right? And this practice didn't just start with what's been going on in the recent months. This is a practice that if we all take the time to really observe and put some action behind, that imagine what we could do to be shifting and adding in a little bit more consideration to everyone taking care of each other. So I look forward to the next time that we get to do this. And until then, please take care of yourself, and I will see you soon. So thank you for putting the time in. どうもありがとうございました。